Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, summarized by Detailed Book Summaries. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you did, welcome to our book family. Chapter 1, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, along with co-authors Tal Raz and Steve W. Martin, introduces negotiation not as a battle of logic, but as a deeply human interaction driven by emotions, perceptions, and psychological dynamics. The opening ideas challenge the traditional belief that negotiation is primarily about compromise or meeting halfway. Instead, the authors argue that compromise often leads to poor outcomes because it forces both parties to give up value unnecessarily. The title itself reflects a central philosophy. When negotiating something important, splitting the difference can result in solutions that satisfy no one. True negotiation seeks understanding, influence, and outcomes that create real advantage without damaging relationships. Chris Voss begins by drawing from his experience as an FBI hostage negotiator, a role that required calm thinking in life-or-death situations. He explains that negotiation skills are not reserved for dramatic hostage scenarios, but are part of everyday life. Every discussion about salary, family responsibilities, deadlines, friendships, business deals, or even choosing where to eat involves negotiation. People constantly try to influence each other's decisions, often without realizing it. By understanding how communication works at a psychological level, anyone can significantly improve their results in both personal and professional situations. The chapter introduces the concept that human beings are not as rational as they often believe. Traditional negotiation strategies were built on the assumption that people make decisions logically after analyzing facts and numbers. However, behavioral psychology has shown that emotions strongly influence choices. Fear, trust, pride, insecurity, and hope often guide decisions more than objective reasoning. Recognizing this truth allows negotiators to approach conversations more effectively. Instead of overwhelming others with facts, successful negotiators learn to manage emotions, build trust, and guide conversations in ways that make the other party feel understood. A major principle emphasized early in the chapter is tactical empathy. Tactical empathy is the deliberate effort to understand the feelings, mindset, and perspective of the other person. It does not necessarily mean agreeing with them, but it shows that their point of view is recognized and respected. People are more willing to cooperate when they feel heard. This insight is powerful because many conflicts escalate simply because individuals feel ignored or misunderstood. When someone senses that their concerns are being taken seriously, they become more open to dialogue. Voss highlights that listening is one of the most powerful tools in negotiation. Many people mistakenly believe negotiation involves speaking persuasively or dominating a conversation. In reality, listening carefully often provides the information needed to guide discussions successfully. Active listening involves paying attention not only to words, but also to tone, emotion, hesitation, and underlying concerns. It allows the negotiator to uncover hidden motivations and identify what truly matters to the other party. The chapter also introduces the idea that trust is built through communication patterns. People naturally respond positively when they feel safe. Voss explains that negotiators must create a calm and respectful environment where the other person does not feel attacked or pressured. This emotional safety encourages openness. One method to achieve this is maintaining a calm voice and using a friendly tone that reduces tension. When individuals feel safe, they are less defensive and more willing to consider new ideas. Another important insight discussed is the concept of labeling emotions. Labeling involves identifying and naming the feelings expressed by the other person. For example, saying that it seems like a situation feels frustrating or stressful demonstrates understanding. This technique often helps reduce emotional intensity because people feel validated. Emotional acknowledgement creates connection and signals respect. When people feel understood, they often become more cooperative and less resistant. The authors also challenge the idea that negotiation is a win-lose competition. Instead, they suggest that negotiation is a collaborative process where both parties try to solve a problem together. Even in difficult situations, the goal is to create outcomes that feel satisfying and fair. This approach encourages creativity, allowing negotiators to explore solutions beyond simple compromise. By understanding underlying interests rather than fixed positions, negotiators can discover possibilities that benefit everyone involved. Throughout the chapter, examples from real hostage negotiation situations illustrate how these principles work in practice. Voss shares stories of intense scenarios where understanding emotions was more important than logical arguments. These experiences demonstrate that even in high-pressure situations, empathy and patience can produce better results than force or authority. The lessons learned from these situations apply equally to everyday conversations, proving that emotional intelligence is a valuable skill in all areas of life. The chapter also emphasizes preparation as a critical part of negotiation. Preparation involves thinking carefully about what the other party might want, what concerns they may have, and what pressures they might face. Anticipating these factors allows the negotiator to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Preparation reduces anxiety and increases confidence because it creates a sense of readiness. An important mindset shift introduced in this chapter is learning to become comfortable with silence. Many people feel uncomfortable when conversations pause, and they rush to fill the silence by offering concessions or speaking unnecessarily. Skilled negotiators understand that silence can be powerful. It gives the other person time to think and often encourages them to reveal more information. Silence creates space for reflection and can lead to better understanding. The authors also explain that people often fear negotiation because they associate it with conflict. However, negotiation does not need to be confrontational. When approached with empathy and respect, negotiation becomes an opportunity to build stronger relationships. Effective negotiators seek long-term trust rather than short-term victories. This perspective encourages ethical behavior and discourages manipulation. Another theme explored in this chapter is the importance of curiosity. Curiosity helps negotiators explore motivations and uncover hidden needs. Asking thoughtful questions allows the conversation to move beyond surface-level demands. When negotiators understand what truly matters to the other party, they can propose solutions that address deeper concerns. Curiosity also demonstrates humility and openness, qualities that build credibility. The chapter further explains that people often resist change because they fear losing control. Negotiators who acknowledge this fear can help others feel more comfortable exploring alternatives. Giving people a sense of control increases cooperation. One way to do this is by offering choices rather than demands. Choices create a feeling of participation and involvement in decision-making. Chris Voss emphasizes that negotiation skills can be learned and improved through practice. Just as athletes train to improve performance, individuals can develop communication skills that lead to better outcomes. Practicing listening, empathy, and emotional awareness strengthens the ability to influence conversations positively. Over time, these skills become natural and effective. The opening chapter concludes by encouraging readers to rethink everything they believe about negotiation. Instead of viewing negotiation as a competitive battle, it should be seen as a human interaction shaped by psychology and emotion. Success in negotiation comes from understanding people, not overpowering them. By mastering empathy, listening carefully, and recognizing emotional dynamics, anyone can achieve better results in conversations that matter. Ultimately, Chapter 1 establishes a strong foundation for the lessons that follow. It reveals that negotiation is not about clever arguments or rigid strategies, but about understanding human nature. The insights presented prepare the reader to explore more advanced techniques in later chapters. The journey begins with recognizing that every conversation presents an opportunity to build trust, influence decisions, and create meaningful outcomes. In Chapter 2 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, together with Tal Raz and Steve W. Martin. The focus moves deeper into one of the most powerful tools in negotiation: tactical empathy expressed through deliberate listening techniques. While Chapter 1 introduces the importance of understanding emotions, this chapter explains how to actively demonstrate that understanding in a way that builds trust and encourages cooperation. The authors reveal that negotiation success often depends less on what is said and more on how carefully one listens. A central idea in this chapter is the concept of mirroring. Mirroring involves repeating the last few words or key phrases spoken by the other person. This technique may seem simple, but it is remarkably effective because it encourages the speaker to continue talking and expand on their thoughts. People naturally feel validated when their words are acknowledged. Mirroring shows attentiveness without interrupting the flow of conversation. It creates a subtle sense of connection that makes the other person feel comfortable sharing more information. The power of mirroring lies in its ability to reveal deeper meaning. Often, individuals communicate indirectly, expressing surface-level concerns while hiding deeper motivations. By repeating important phrases, the negotiator signals curiosity and interest. This encourages the speaker to clarify their position, sometimes revealing valuable insights about priorities, fears, or expectations. As conversations continue, the negotiator gathers information that helps guide the discussion toward better outcomes. The authors explain that mirroring works because human beings naturally seek understanding. When someone repeats our words, we instinctively feel heard. This sense of recognition reduces defensiveness and builds rapport. Rapport is essential in negotiation because people are more willing to cooperate with those they trust. Trust does not develop instantly, but consistent listening behaviors create an environment where trust can grow gradually. Another important element introduced in this chapter is the use of tone. Chris Voss describes different voice styles that influence how messages are received. A calm and reassuring tone helps create a sense of safety, making the other person feel respected rather than pressured. A friendly tone signals openness and willingness to collaborate. On the other hand, an aggressive or impatient tone can quickly damage trust and create resistance. Negotiators must become aware of how their tone affects emotional responses. The chapter emphasizes that effective negotiators learn to slow down conversations. Many people rush through discussions because they feel pressure to reach conclusions quickly. However, rushing often leads to misunderstandings and missed opportunities. Slowing down allows both parties to process information more carefully. It also provides time to observe emotional cues such as hesitation, enthusiasm, or concern. These cues often reveal more than spoken words. Chris Voss illustrates these principles through real-life negotiation experiences where careful listening uncovered critical details. In high-pressure situations, negotiators could not rely on logical arguments alone. They needed to understand emotional states and adjust their communication accordingly. These stories demonstrate that patience often produces better results than urgency. By allowing conversations to unfold naturally, negotiators gain valuable insights that lead to more effective strategies. The authors also explain that people often communicate indirectly when discussing sensitive issues. Instead of expressing concerns openly, they may hint at problems through subtle language or tone changes. Skilled negotiators learn to detect these signals. Mirroring helps bring hidden concerns into the open because it encourages elaboration. When individuals feel safe enough to explain their thoughts more fully, the conversation becomes more productive. Another key lesson in this chapter is that silence can be a strategic advantage. Silence allows the other person time to reflect and respond thoughtfully. Many individuals feel uncomfortable with silence and attempt to fill it quickly. However, negotiators who remain patient often discover that silence encourages the other party to share additional information voluntarily. Silence can communicate confidence and attentiveness, reinforcing the perception that the negotiator is genuinely interested in understanding. The chapter also highlights the importance of curiosity in communication. Asking open-ended questions invites deeper responses than simple yes or no questions. Questions that begin with words such as what or how encourage explanation and reflection. These types of questions allow negotiators to explore possibilities and identify underlying motivations. Curiosity demonstrates respect because it shows interest in the other person's perspective. Another concept discussed is the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing involves receiving sound, but listening involves understanding meaning. Many people listen only to prepare their response rather than to truly understand the speaker. This habit creates misunderstandings because responses may not address the real concern being expressed. Effective negotiators discipline themselves to focus fully on the speaker without planning their reply prematurely. Chris Voss emphasizes that listening is not passive but active. Active listening involves observing body language, tone variations, and emotional expressions. It requires concentration and patience. By paying attention to subtle signals, negotiators can detect inconsistencies or uncertainties that may influence the outcome of the conversation. These insights allow negotiators to respond thoughtfully and maintain control of the dialogue. The authors also explain that mirroring can help manage difficult conversations. When emotions run high, repeating keywords calmly can slow the pace of the discussion and prevent escalation. This technique helps individuals feel acknowledged even when disagreements exist. When people sense that their perspective is being taken seriously, they are more willing to engage constructively rather than defensively. The chapter encourages readers to practice mirroring in everyday interactions. Conversations with friends, family members, colleagues, or classmates provide opportunities to develop this skill. Over time, mirroring becomes natural and enhances communication quality. As understanding improves, relationships often become stronger because individuals feel respected and valued. Another insight presented in this chapter is that effective communication reduces conflict. Many disagreements occur not because of opposing goals, but because of misunderstandings. When individuals feel misunderstood, frustration increases. By improving listening skills, negotiators can prevent unnecessary conflict and guide conversations toward productive solutions. Chris Voss also explains that mirroring helps uncover what people truly want rather than what they initially request. Sometimes individuals present demands that do not fully reflect their real priorities. Through careful listening, negotiators can identify the underlying interests that shape these demands. Understanding these interests allows for creative problem-solving that satisfies deeper needs. The chapter concludes by reinforcing the idea that listening is one of the most valuable negotiation skills anyone can develop. Words have power, but understanding has greater power. By practicing mirroring, maintaining a calm tone, and demonstrating genuine curiosity, negotiators create an environment where collaboration becomes possible. The ability to listen effectively transforms conversations from confrontations into opportunities for mutual benefit. Chapter 2 builds upon the foundation established earlier by showing that empathy must be demonstrated through specific communication techniques. Tactical empathy becomes practical through mirroring, patience, and attentiveness. These tools allow negotiators to gather information, build trust, and guide discussions toward successful outcomes. As the reader progresses through the book, these listening skills become essential for applying more advanced negotiation strategies. Chapter 3 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, with contributions from Tal Raz and Steve W. Martin, explores the powerful role that emotions play in shaping decisions and introduces techniques for identifying, labeling, and influencing emotional dynamics during negotiation. Building on the listening skills discussed earlier, this chapter explains that understanding emotions is not enough. Negotiators must actively acknowledge and address them in a strategic and respectful manner. Emotions influence every decision people make, whether they are aware of it or not, and ignoring emotional signals often leads to failed agreements or unnecessary conflict. The chapter begins by emphasizing that people want to feel understood before they are willing to consider solutions. When individuals feel ignored, dismissed, or misunderstood, they often become defensive. Defensiveness blocks communication and reduces the chances of reaching agreement. Chris Voss explains that one of the most effective ways to overcome defensiveness is through a technique called labeling. Labeling involves identifying the emotions the other person may be experiencing and expressing that observation calmly. Statements that recognize feelings demonstrate empathy and show that the negotiator is paying attention. Labeling works because it acknowledges emotional reality without forcing agreement. For example, when someone feels frustrated, recognizing that frustration helps reduce tension. When individuals sense that their emotional experience is understood, they feel less pressure to defend themselves. This creates space for constructive dialogue. Emotional acknowledgement does not mean surrendering one's position. Rather, it strengthens communication by building mutual respect. The authors explain that emotions often operate beneath the surface of conversations. People may express anger when they actually feel fear or insecurity. They may appear confident when they are uncertain about outcomes. Skilled negotiators learn to detect these hidden emotional signals through careful observation. Tone of voice, packing of speech, and choice of words often reveal more than the content of the message itself. By identifying emotional patterns, negotiators can respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Another important insight presented in this chapter is that negative emotions must be addressed directly rather than avoided. Many people attempt to ignore tension in hopes that it will disappear. However, unspoken concerns often grow stronger over time. Addressing emotions early prevents misunderstandings from escalating into major conflicts. Chris Voss encourages negotiators to bring concerns into the open respectfully, allowing both parties to explore solutions together. The chapter also introduces the idea that acknowledging fears can reduce their power. Fear often prevents individuals from considering new ideas or compromises. When fears are openly discussed, they become easier to evaluate realistically. This transparency allows both parties to identify ways to reduce risk and increase confidence in potential agreements. Addressing fear directly demonstrates honesty and encourages trust. Chris Voss illustrates how labeling emotions can shift the direction of conversations. High-stakes negotiations, recognizing emotional pressure often led to breakthroughs. When individuals felt understood, they became more willing to share information that helped resolve conflicts. Emotional validation creates connection, and connection creates opportunity for agreement. Another technique discussed in this chapter involves encouraging the other party to say, "That's right." When people feel accurately understood, they often respond with confirmation that the description reflects their perspective. This moment of recognition indicates that trust has been established. Achieving this response signals that the negotiator has successfully captured the essence of the other person's viewpoint. Once individuals feel understood, they are more open to collaboration. The authors emphasize that trust develops gradually through consistent communication behaviors. Trust cannot be forced, but it can be encouraged through patience and sincerity. Demonstrating genuine interest in the other person's concerns strengthens relationships and improves negotiation outcomes. People prefer to work with individuals who respect their perspectives. The chapter also highlights the importance of perspective taking. Perspective taking involves imagining how a situation appears from the other person's point of view. This mental exercise helps negotiators anticipate concerns and prepare thoughtful responses. Understanding another person's situation reduces the likelihood of misinterpretation. It also allows negotiators to design solutions that address shared interests. Chris Voss explains that emotional intelligence plays a crucial role in negotiation success. Emotional intelligence involves recognizing emotions in oneself and others, and using that awareness to guide communication. Negotiators with strong emotional intelligence remain calm under pressure and avoid reacting impulsively. Calm thinking allows them to maintain focus on long-term goals rather than temporary frustrations. The chapter further explains that acknowledging emotions does not weaken a negotiator's position. Some people fear that empathy may signal vulnerability or reduce authority. However, empathy often increases influence because it builds cooperation. When people feel respected, they are more willing to engage constructively. Cooperation leads to more creative solutions than confrontation. Another idea explored in this chapter is the importance of encouraging open expression. When individuals feel safe sharing concerns, they often reveal valuable information that supports problem solving. Encouraging openness requires patience and reassurance. Negotiators must create an environment where honest communication feels comfortable. Chris Voss also describes the impact of fairness perceptions. People care deeply about being treated fairly. Even beneficial agreements may be rejected if they appear unfair. Negotiators must consider how proposals will be perceived emotionally. Addressing fairness concerns directly helps prevent resentment and builds goodwill. The authors explain that emotional acknowledgement can transform difficult conversations into productive discussions. Instead of focusing solely on positions, negotiators can explore underlying interests and motivations. Understanding these deeper concerns allows for solutions that satisfy both parties more effectively. The chapter reinforces the importance of slowing down communication. Careful listening, thoughtful responses, and emotional awareness contribute to better outcomes. Rushed decisions often overlook important details. By allowing time for reflection, negotiators improve the quality of agreements. Another important lesson presented is that empathy is a skill that improves with practice. Practicing emotional awareness in everyday interactions strengthens communication abilities. Over time, recognizing emotional cues becomes more natural. As confidence grows, negotiators become more effective in managing complex conversations. Chris Voss emphasizes that successful negotiation involves guiding emotions toward positive outcomes. Emotional influence does not involve manipulation, but thoughtful communication that encourages cooperation. By acknowledging concerns and demonstrating understanding, negotiators create conditions where agreement becomes possible. The chapter concludes by highlighting that emotions are not obstacles to negotiation, but essential elements of it. Understanding emotional dynamics allows negotiators to navigate conversations with confidence and clarity. When individuals feel heard, respected, and understood, they become more willing to collaborate. Emotional awareness transforms negotiation from a struggle for control into a process of mutual understanding. Chapter 3 strengthens the reader's ability to recognize the importance of emotional connection in communication. By mastering labeling techniques, encouraging confirmation of understanding, and demonstrating empathy consistently, negotiators improve their ability to influence outcomes positively. These skills prepare the reader for more advanced strategies that combine emotional intelligence with structured negotiation approaches in the chapters that follow. Chapter 4 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, together with Tal Raz and Steve W. Martin, focuses on one of the most misunderstood words in negotiation. No. Many people fear hearing the word because they interpret it as rejection or failure. However, this chapter explains that no is not the end of negotiation. It is often the beginning of honest communication. Rather than viewing no as a barrier, skilled negotiators see it as an opportunity to gain clarity, uncover concerns, and move closer to meaningful agreement. Chris Voss explains that people often feel uncomfortable saying yes because agreement can create pressure or obligation. Saying yes may cause individuals to feel trapped or uncertain about future consequences. On the other hand, saying no gives people a sense of safety and control. When individuals feel in control, they are more willing to engage openly in conversation. Understanding this psychological dynamic helps negotiators guide discussions in a way that encourages honest responses rather than forced agreement. The chapter emphasizes that hearing no provides valuable information. When someone says no, they are expressing boundaries, concerns, or fears that must be addressed before progress can occur. Instead of reacting negatively, effective negotiators respond with curiosity. They seek to understand what is causing hesitation. By identifying the reasons behind resistance, negotiators can adjust their approach and propose alternatives that better align with the other person's needs. Another important insight presented in this chapter is that forcing agreement too quickly can damage trust. When individuals feel pressured to say yes, they may agree superficially but fail to follow through later. This creates unreliable outcomes and weak relationships. Encouraging honest responses, even when they involve disagreement, leads to stronger and more sustainable agreements. Genuine agreement is built on understanding, not pressure. Chris Voss introduces techniques for inviting the word no in a way that makes the other person feel comfortable expressing concerns. One method involves framing questions so that saying no feels safe. For example, instead of asking for immediate agreement, negotiators can ask whether a proposal would be unreasonable or difficult. This approach allows individuals to express hesitation honestly without feeling defensive. When people feel free to express disagreement, conversations become more productive. The chapter also explains that no often signals the need for more information. Individuals may resist proposals because they lack sufficient understanding or feel uncertain about potential risks. Providing clear explanations and addressing concerns helps reduce uncertainty. As confidence increases, resistance often decreases. Negotiators must remain patient and willing to explore the reasons behind hesitation. Chris Voss emphasizes that no can protect relationships by preventing premature decisions. Quick agreements may overlook important details that later cause dissatisfaction. Allowing space for disagreement ensures that both parties fully consider the implications of their choices. This careful approach improves the quality of outcomes and reduces the likelihood of future conflict. The authors also highlight the importance of maintaining a calm and respectful attitude when hearing no. Emotional reactions such as frustration or disappointment can damage communication. Skilled negotiators remain composed and treat disagreement as a normal part of discussion. This mindset encourages constructive dialogue rather than confrontation. Another idea explored in this chapter is that no can reveal hidden priorities. When individuals reject a proposal, they often indicate what matters most to them. Understanding these priorities allows negotiators to develop solutions that better address underlying concerns. By focusing on interests rather than positions, negotiators discover opportunities for creative problem solving. The chapter also explains that individuals often say no when they feel misunderstood. Demonstrating empathy helps reduce this resistance. When people sense that their perspective is valued, they become more open to reconsidering their position. Empathy builds trust, and trust encourages flexibility. Chris Voss describes how experienced negotiators use no to clarify expectations. Asking carefully structured questions allows the other party to define boundaries and preferences. This information helps shape proposals that align with shared goals. Rather than guessing what the other person wants, negotiators gather insights through respectful dialogue. The chapter further emphasizes that negotiation is not about forcing outcomes, but guiding conversations toward mutual understanding. Encouraging honest responses strengthens relationships because both parties feel respected. Respect creates a positive environment where collaboration becomes possible. Another key lesson in this chapter is that rejection should not be taken personally. Individuals often interpret disagreement as criticism of their ideas or abilities. However, no usually reflects situational concerns rather than personal judgment. Maintaining emotional balance allows negotiators to remain focused on problem solving rather than reacting defensively. Chris Voss also explains that successful negotiators separate the person from the problem. Disagreement does not mean hostility. By treating the other party as a partner in solving a challenge, negotiators encourage cooperation. This collaborative mindset reduces tension and increases the likelihood of productive outcomes. The chapter highlights the importance of patience when navigating resistance. Complex decisions often require time for reflection. Allowing the other person space to think demonstrates respect for their perspective. Rushing decisions may create pressure that leads to rejection. Patience encourages thoughtful consideration and better agreements. Another important concept discussed is that no creates an opportunity to refine proposals. Feedback helps negotiators adjust their approach in ways that improve alignment with the other party's interests. Flexibility increases the chances of finding solutions that satisfy both sides. Chris Voss emphasizes that negotiation success often depends on persistence combined with empathy. Persistence ensures continued effort, while empathy ensures respectful communication. Together, these qualities create a balanced approach that encourages cooperation without sacrificing objectives. The chapter also explains that hearing no can increase confidence because it provides clarity about where challenges exist. Clear understanding allows negotiators to prepare more effectively and address concerns directly. Clarity reduces uncertainty and improves decision-making. As the chapter concludes, readers are encouraged to rethink their perception of disagreement. Instead of fearing rejection, negotiators should welcome honest responses as valuable guidance. Every no provides insight that can lead to better solutions. Understanding the meaning behind resistance strengthens communication and builds trust. Chapter 4 reinforces the idea that negotiation is a process of discovery rather than confrontation. By encouraging honest dialogue, respecting boundaries, and maintaining curiosity, negotiators transform resistance into opportunity. Learning to embrace no as part of the conversation prepares the reader for more advanced negotiation strategies presented in the final chapter. Chapter 5 of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, written with Tal Raz and Steve W. Martin, brings together the earlier principles of empathy, listening, and emotional awareness, and introduces one of the most practical tools in negotiation: calibrated questions. These questions guide conversations in a way that encourages the other person to think deeply, reveal information, and participate in problem solving. Instead of telling people what to do, effective negotiators ask questions that naturally lead the conversation toward productive solutions. Chris Voss explains that calibrated questions usually begin with words such as what and how. These types of questions invite thoughtful responses rather than simple yes or no answers. When individuals are asked questions that require explanation, they become more engaged in the discussion. Engagement increases cooperation because people feel involved in shaping the outcome. This sense of participation creates a collaborative environment rather than a competitive one. The chapter emphasizes that calibrated questions help uncover hidden motivations. People often express demands without explaining the deeper reasons behind them. By asking carefully structured questions, negotiators can explore the underlying interests that shape these demands. Understanding these interests allows for more creative and satisfying solutions. Instead of focusing on positions, negotiators focus on needs, concerns, and goals. Another key insight presented in this chapter is that questions can guide thinking without creating pressure. Direct instructions may cause resistance because individuals feel their independence is threatened. Questions, however, encourage reflection while preserving autonomy. When people feel free to choose, they are more open to considering alternatives. Calibrated questions create the impression that the solution comes from the other party, even when the negotiator has carefully guided the discussion. Chris Voss also explains that effective questions encourage the other person to consider constraints and challenges. For example, asking how a particular solution might be implemented encourages realistic thinking. This approach helps identify potential obstacles early in the conversation. Addressing obstacles proactively prevents misunderstandings and strengthens agreements. The authors highlight that calibrated questions demonstrate respect. Asking for input shows that the negotiator values the other person's perspective. Respect builds trust, and trust improves communication. People prefer working with individuals who recognize their expertise and experience. When negotiators show humility by asking thoughtful questions, they strengthen relationships. The chapter also introduces the idea that successful negotiation involves helping the other party feel that the agreement was their choice. People are more committed to decisions they believe they helped create. Ownership increases accountability and follow-through. When individuals feel responsible for a solution, they are more likely to support it actively. Chris Voss emphasizes the importance of maintaining calm communication while asking questions. Tone of voice continues to influence emotional responses. A calm and respectful tone encourages openness, while an aggressive tone may cause defensiveness. Emotional awareness remains essential throughout the negotiation process. Another important lesson discussed in this chapter is the concept of fairness. People care deeply about fairness, and perceived unfairness can lead to resistance even when proposals offer clear benefits. Calibrated questions allow negotiators to explore fairness concerns and adjust proposals accordingly. Addressing fairness strengthens trust and reduces conflict. The chapter also explains that effective negotiators remain flexible. Flexibility allows them to adapt strategies based on new information. As conversations progress, new insights may change priorities or reveal unexpected opportunities. Remaining open to adjustment increases the likelihood of finding mutually beneficial solutions. Chris Voss provides examples of situations where calibrated questions led to breakthroughs. In difficult negotiations, carefully chosen questions helped uncover information that allowed both parties to move forward. These examples demonstrate that curiosity often produces better results than argument. Another key insight presented is that negotiation involves guiding emotions as well as ideas. Questions can reduce tension by shifting focus toward problem solving. When individuals concentrate on solutions, they become less defensive. This shift encourages cooperation and creativity. The authors also explain that preparation strengthens the effectiveness of calibrated questions. Anticipating possible responses allows negotiators to guide conversations strategically. Preparation increases confidence and improves the quality of communication. Chris Voss emphasizes that negotiation skills are valuable in everyday life. Conversations about responsibilities, expectations, deadlines, and goals all benefit from thoughtful questioning. Practicing calibrated questions in daily interactions strengthens communication abilities and improves relationships. The chapter highlights the importance of persistence combined with patience. Some negotiations require time to reach agreement. Continuing to ask thoughtful questions encourages progress even when challenges arise. Patience allows both parties to consider options carefully and avoid rushed decisions. Another important concept discussed is that influence does not require authority. Even individuals without formal power can guide conversations effectively through communication skills. Asking thoughtful questions allows negotiators to shape discussions without appearing controlling. This approach increases cooperation and reduces resistance. Chris Voss also explains that negotiation success often depends on balancing confidence with humility. Confidence ensures clarity about goals, while humility encourages openness to new ideas. This balance creates respectful dialogue and productive outcomes. The chapter concludes by reinforcing the central message of the book. Negotiation is not about domination, but about understanding. By combining empathy, listening skills, emotional awareness, and calibrated questions, individuals can influence decisions ethically and effectively. Negotiation becomes an opportunity to strengthen relationships while achieving meaningful goals. Chapter 5 completes the journey by showing how all the techniques discussed throughout the book work together. Tactical empathy builds trust, listening reveals information, emotional awareness guides communication, acceptance of no creates honesty, and calibrated questions encourage collaboration. Together, these principles transform negotiation into a thoughtful and strategic process. The lessons presented throughout Never Split the Difference demonstrate that successful negotiation is not reserved for experts in high-pressure situations. Anyone can learn these skills and apply them in daily life. Whether discussing career opportunities, academic responsibilities, family decisions, or business agreements, effective communication creates better outcomes. Ultimately, the book teaches that negotiation is about connection. People want to feel understood, respected, and valued. When negotiators approach conversations with empathy and curiosity, they create conditions where agreement becomes possible. The ability to communicate thoughtfully is one of the most valuable skills a person can develop because it influences nearly every aspect of life. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you did, welcome to our book family.